And if we will follow me in the Pledge of Allegiance, I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Retire the colors.
Almighty God, we give thanks for this opportunity to join together in good fellowship, and we ask thy protection and blessing upon all Marines and American servicemen and servicewomen who are serving in harm's way. Amen.
Our awardee this year is James Brown. Many of you know him, many of you know of him, and yet we all have a facet of all the many activities that James has been involved in here in the Bay Area forever. James is well known for helping local military units and veterans. He works on the advisory council for the director of the Palo Alto VA and on their select teams for veterans employment, Marine Corps musters, and the Wounded Warrior Support. He helps lead the Marine Corps muster annually at the Palo Alto VA, involving about 1,500 Marines by assisting them with health care as well as finding educational and employment opportunities. The sheer magnitude of the effort and the impact on our communities and in support of our active components and our reserve units in the area is huge and needs to be acknowledged on these occasions. All of us that have benefited in one way, shape, or form by your efforts are here to acknowledge these things, and we're just damn glad you're living here and not in Washington, D.C. Please come up. Ladies and gentlemen, James Brown.
The truth is, the way the Colonel described what my wife and I and our friends do in the community, it's almost as if you guys are here to recognize one outstanding person, but the truth of the matter is all of that is done by a bunch of outstanding people, most of which are sitting in this room. I'll tell you, the three most common questions I get when people ask about all this stuff we do is, where do we find the time? And my response is typically, I get 24 hours a day, don't you? And that's the truth. I mean, we have the same amount of time as everybody, but we've never watched Survivor. We've never watched the Honey Boo Boo. We don't spend our time in front of the TV wasting our time. Whatever day of the week that's playing, we're probably at the VA having dinner with a patient, or we're probably sitting down with someone doing something elsewhere, or at least coming up with an idea and asking people if they would support it. So where do we find the time? It's given to us. It's part of the rotation of the planets. How do we do it and why do we do it are the other two most common questions. I'll do the why first. Usually when people say, why do we do it? I say, well, because it's easy and it's the right thing to do. The truth of the matter is that's the easy answer. The hard answer is because I owe it to the Marine Corps and I owe it to the military, because everything that I've done, everything that I have, everything that is before me is because I feel the need to pay back the military. And I won't get into a lot of details because I want to stay brief and I want to stay short, but I grew up in a very rural, very southern Louisiana where my family was poor. 3 meals a day was not a given. Got my first job at the age of 12 and I've never been unemployed since. Unfortunately, when you go to work at a young age like that, you can put yourself in vulnerable positions, and at the age of 12 I did end up the victim of a very violent crime, and 6 of my classmates were killed. I survived, and that's a whole nother story that this is not the venue for. But needless to say, the next 5 years, I was lost. I didn't know what I was going to do, didn't know how I was going to do it. I felt weak, I felt vulnerable, I felt ashamed, and I made a friend. And I made that friend when I was about to do something stupid and bad, and his name was Gunnery Sergeant Charles Shivers. And I was in a town of Houma, Louisiana. I think I was walking the street looking to break something, and he called me to the side, invited me to lunch, and he spent the next year as my friend, mentoring me. He was a Marine recruiter, and he was a recon Marine, Vietnam veteran, probably a 30-inch waist and a 50-inch chest. I mean, the guy was shaped like a V and had every ribbon you could think of, and I just looked at him and I was like, I want what he's got, and I did. And at the age of 17, I graduated high school, joined the Marine Corps, scored very high in the ASVAB, and he told me I could do everything I want to do. He says, any job you want is available to you. And I said, well, I want to be an infantryman. And I'll never forget what he told me. He said, well, on paper, you're very smart, but what you just said is very stupid. And I just told him, I said, but you started in the infantry. You know, you're big, you're strong, you're brave, you're courage. You know, that's what I want. I'm chasing courage, and I'm chasing honor. And he said, okay, then we'll do that. And he put me in, and we lived on the bank of the Mississippi, and we were on the west bank, so they shipped me to San Diego, because if you don't know, they choose where you go by the Mississippi. Marine Corps was great for me, but it's not my defining time. Today's my defining time. My dad, great guy, 8th grade education, not the smartest guy, but certainly the wisest guy. But he told me a couple things, and one thing is that respect is earned and lost on a daily basis. It doesn't matter what you did 10 years ago or 5 years ago. It matters what you do today. It matters what you do tomorrow. And we live by that. And so why I do it? Because had I not met Gunny Shivers, had I not met that Marine recruiter that day, I would not be who I am today. I would not know my wife. I would not know any of you. I would not be living in California. Nothing I am or have or do would be possible if not for that one person. So everything I owe, everything I am, everything I have, everybody who loves me, everybody I love, started with a Marine recruiter. So that's why I do what I do. How I do it is right here in front of you. I got an email a couple days ago from a Marine captain who's running a special MAGTF in the Middle East. He has 163 Marines spread across 7 countries. He sent me a message asking for help, care packages, anything morale related. All I did was send one email out. Judy and Brenda over there and a bunch of other Blue Star moms all got together, and his unit has hundreds and hundreds of packages. He sent me the thank you, but all I did was send an email. The McCulloughs, Brian and Joy McCullough, have given I don't know how many thousands and thousands of dollars and hours of their time to Gold Star children for scholarships. Gloria Cervantes, right next to Dan Noiser. Gloria Cervantes, a couple years ago, we had a Gold Star mom. Her son had 18 awards for heroism, and she was being disrespected and being refused to be given a Gold Star banner because her son committed suicide after his 18th mission where he saved wounded Marines. The Army came to me and said, can you help? Gloria and I met the mother in Arlington, and we presented the banner to her ourselves at her son's grave, and we built a whole ceremony. Saba Safiari over there just got back from a tour in Iraq. The VA thanked me for a flag for the director's retirement that he shipped from Iraq. Everywhere I go around this room, a couple years ago, we had 67 Marines stranded at the San Francisco airport. No per diem, no food, no entertainment, no nothing. The Marines Memorial provided BART tickets for them to go. AT&T gave me first row Giants tickets for them. Sergeant Major Lichty's wife, my wife, a bunch of other Blue Star moms and other wives, they went out and cooked home-cooked meals for these guys. It turned out to be the best trip they ever had. But all I did was send an email. So when people say, how do I do it? I don't. We do, all of us. And it takes a team. If any one of you were to say no to me, that event would not have happened. And it's really as simple as that. It takes a team. I might be the coach today, but there's a lot of other coaches, and I'm certainly not the only game in town. So that's how I do it. And I'll leave it at that. I know that there's a lot of stuff to cover today, and so I just want to say thank you. Thank you for all you do. Thank you for supporting me. Thank you for letting me do what I do. Tony with the VA, Director of the VA over there. Bill, Chief of Voluntary Services. Damien, the Public Affairs Officer. If you guys said no, I wouldn't be able to work at the muster. You let me. 23rd Marines and RS San Francisco, Concord, 6th Anglo, all of the units out here. If you said no to me, it wouldn't happen. And so I just want to say thank you for letting me do what I do. I'd be miserable if you didn't. Thank you.
The Marines Memorial exists to honor the legacy of military service with a living memorial. That's our museum. That's our structure, the living memorial, with programs that do 3 things, the action verbs I like to hone in on: commemorate, educate, and serve. And in many ways, a lunch like this does all 3 at one time. We're commemorating, we're educating each other, we're networking at tables, and we're honoring our currently serving and supporting them in the effort. So thank you all for coming today. General Lebidine has warfighting experience. He was in Operation Iraqi Freedom in the march up to Baghdad, ended up being the camp commander for as we started having our forward operating bases in Babylon. So he really is the full package, and currently He commands the 4th Marine Division, which is comprised of about 17,000 Marines and sailors, and they're spread all over the United States, and many of them forward deployed everywhere from Mexico to Georgia to Iraq and Afghanistan. So with that, I will relinquish the microphone to General Lebidine. Sir, it's a pleasure.
Well, thank you, Chris, and for all, I'm sure we all realize and know Chris Starling's career in the Marine Corps, one of our regimental commanders, and just does marvelous things here for us, all of us here at the Marine Memorial. And so thanks for that introduction. And Admiral, friends, family, service members, everyone, let me start by saying after I came and started meeting you all, and of course, Admiral, sir, I'm not sure why I'm up here today, all right? I'm pretty certain that there's a lot of other folks in here that I should be sitting there listening to. So, sir, if you don't mind bearing with it for a couple minutes, thanks for coming today and being part of this team, and welcome to the area. And I'll tell you, when I went to, they send all the 1-stars for 5 weeks. They bring classes together for about 50 of our peers, and then we go all around the country. We go out to the combatant commands, and we learn quite a bit about the services. And when the commandant from the Coast Guard came and spoke to us, and then we had the opportunity to go down to Joint Task Force down south, everything that they do there in Key West. As Colonel Cruz said, I started walking away, say, gee, I think I joined the wrong service, all right? So thanks for what you're doing. It's a little bit unheralded in the sense of all the rest, but thank you, sir, and thanks for the Coast Guard does every day. Hoorah. I will say that to start with is that I have to be kind of honest that I wasn't disappointed that General Myatt isn't here today. I say that because I was a lieutenant in the 1st Marine Division when he was the commanding general, and he came out to Horno, as Chris had mentioned, and we were giving him a demonstration on fast roping, how we learned how to basically do insertions out of helicopters. And my version wasn't quite the general's version, all right? So by the time we were done, I think if he was here today and looking at speaking, my post-trauma would reoccur, all right? So as much as I admire and wish I wasn't that disappointed, quite frankly. But in seriousness, though, what a remarkable American. And I know that we all had an opportunity to view his comments this year on 60 Minutes. We showed that to the Marines. Just really remarkable. What an example to all of us, and just means so much to so many, and has done so many great things, and really continues that legacy of mentorship, and greatly appreciate it. So as I kind of start off, a lot of folks come up to me already today and say, well, what do you think? All this going on, what's happening? General Mattis, what's your opinion, and so forth. So I'll say this, okay? I know this for a fact, that I know that we're going to be in great hands. And I'll tell you why. Because we got a chairman named General Dunford that I'm absolutely certain, no matter with all the personalities and all the issues and the rest of it, we got the right man and the right job that's going to be able to keep everybody moving forward, okay? And I say that to you, and I'm going to share a story with you and why I'm such a strong believer of that. As Chris mentioned, during OAF-1, after the march up to Baghdad, the Marines ended up down south in a place called Al-Hilla, which is where the Hanging Gardens of Babylon were, to secure that. And of course, where we thought they were, we found out later on they're actually where we put the airfield underneath that, and that's a whole other story with some of the historians and historical facts, what happened to us in that regard. But in arriving down there, I was the XO of the unit that really had the mayor functions for the Marine Expeditionary Force, the 3-star headquarters with General Conway. And so as we all settled in down there, what ended up happening is that General Conway, General Mattis, who was the 1st Marine Division commander, his deputy, General Kelly, and then General Conway's deputy, General Staller, all ended up in the same building together. And then my boss got sent back to Kuwait, so I became, in fact, the CO of the camp. And let me just say to you all that I got plenty of help on how to run the camp. So I say that to you all because, and give you an example, one day I got word General Mattis wanted to see me. I come down, he pulls me in, he goes, what's the speed limit on the camp here? And I go, sir, it's 5 miles an hour. Very proud of myself. We made 1,000 signs. He said to me, Humvees can't do 5 miles an hour. You're asking the Marines to do something they can't do. Change it to 15. So I go, Roger that, sir. Out I go. About 30 minutes later, I get a call. General Conway wants to talk to me. So I come down and go in and speak to General Conway. He goes, Paul, what's the speed limit on the camp? And I'm thinking, well, I didn't make general for nothing, right? So I said, I think 5 miles an hour, sir. He goes, yeah, you better believe it's 5 miles an hour. You got it? And I said, Roger that, sir. All right, now I went. And there was another man there named then Colonel Dunford, who at that point had become Chief of Staff for 1st Marine Division. And for every problem I had, I would go to him, and then he would go and sort through it all with the generals, and we would all end up going in the right straight and make the right decision. So I know that we're absolutely in a great place and as we go forward. And so I know you're wondering, how did we solve the dilemma? And quite frankly, as Marines will do, and our sailors are with us, we cracked a plan, broke east-west, had routes, and guess what? General Conway's routes were 5 and General Mattis's were 15. Fair enough? And I would say that's one reason why I ended up making it here today. So, at any rate, I am the commanding general. It's a great honor and privilege to be the commanding general of the Fighting Fourth that was activated during World War II. And in fact, saw an amazing amount of combat in Tinian, Saipan, and of course at Iwo Jima. And in fact, over the 2 years. And Dale, I don't know where you're at. If I got this wrong, you just jump up and tell me to shut up, all right? But, with about 17,000 casualties and 8 medals of honor. And I say that to you because that's where this legacy starts with the Fighting Fourth. And I saw Dale today, and there may be a couple other gentlemen here as well. And I just would want to start to say, hey, your legacy's still here. And thank you so much for what you contributed and what you did. And it's just tremendous that you're still coming to luncheons with us, and thank you for being here. In fact, let's have a round of applause for all the World War II guys. It is also our 100th anniversary, and for the Marine Forces Reserve this year. So, as we have now done in our modern technology, of course, I can't go anywhere without either having slides or a video, correct? So I've got a quick video clip, just kind of lay out a little bit about the Marine Forces Reserve.
We are the Marine Corps Reserve. Always faithful, always ready.
All right. So it's kind of nice to summarize once in a while, right? I mean, as Colonel Cruz said earlier, you don't really realize the impacts and what has occurred here in the sense of what the 4th Marine Division has, its history, and of course what it currently is doing. So we have 17,000 Marines and sailors, basically in 88 sites across the country, which leaves my life very interesting day and night with emails and such. But it is just tremendous. They are out into the communities. It is an enormous effort, but in return, the Red Diamond provides the Marine Corps substantial strategic hedge against the competing demands of global presence. You know, that said, our goal is to continue to simply preserve, not just preserve, but continue to grow, continue to provide the right force trained to predictable and realistic standards, equipped properly and prepared for advanced training and deployment. So we're continuing to grow, and I say that because at one point, Colonel Cruz in the mid-90s had one of our Anglico units and was a little bit of a visionary in a sense. And some of the things he was doing then have now ended up as something that over the last 20 years have come to full fruition in the sense of the integration of the reserve component into and with the active component. Just to give you a feel for that, over the next year, we will be putting out another special perfect MAGTF that will be going down to Honduras. As already been mentioned, Colonel Prince was the commanding officer, and when Admiral Tidd there down at Southcom needed to pick one of his JTFs to go to Haiti, he had some choices there, and he picked Tom Prentice and his team. And when they went down there, it was absolutely remarkable what they accomplished in such a short period of time. And in fact, by the time that the Marine Corps was able to kind of arrive with the MEU and some other folks to help them, the mission was really accomplished and what they did down there. So we're gonna continue to put out another special perfect MAGTF with my other regiment on the East Coast with 25th Marines. Currently, we also have Marines that are out training the Jordan Defense Forces, right there, training their defense force that is their kind of first quick reaction force against ISIS there on their border. We have teams that are in Georgia training the Georgian defense battalions that are still rotating into Afghanistan to prepare them for their combat tours. And I have teams that are down with the Mexican Marines, training them as they continue their battle there in the drug wars there in Mexico and their successes. So we also have a AAV platoon, a amphibious assault vehicle platoon that's forward deployed out to Okinawa, and this year we're going to start deploying a recon platoon as well. So we continue to be extremely, extremely busy. I have the largest light armored vehicle battalion in the Marine Corps. We have the largest tank battalion in the Marine Corps. We have 6 companies of reconnaissance, 2 of those are force reconnaissance. We have the 2 regiments, 8 battalions. Accordingly, I have a combat engineer battalion and an AAV battalion. So we bring a lot of capability to the Marine Corps as we move forward. We're completely integrated in our exercises. The capstone event is the integrated training exercise at 29 Palms, of which case every year now we are basically putting out a battalion landing team with a regiment, a battalion, 2 battalions, and underneath that, companies from all those independent battalions that go through a readiness exercise, and then from that are then ready to be deployed. That kind of mantra of being ready to fight tonight. And that's what we're providing the Marine Corps if needed, or really to the country when needed as we go forward. So a lot of things are moving, a lot of things are happening in a sense in our world. Additionally, we also collect millions of dollars in cash and toys for the underprivileged, as we just saw our Toys for Tots events, which many of you are involved in, and thank you so much for that, for these communities that help us with that. It is remarkable what that organization does and our support to that and the families that it helps. It is truly an undertaking, and I can tell you that for a lot of our active Marines and our reserve Marines that are participating in that, they take a great life lessons away from that program. And as I go around and been involved in it in so many years, it is just great because they learn something about what it means in a sense of community service and what it can do for so many young people, and we're actively and continue to support that. We also do about 10,000 funerals a year from my units. I often tell some of my active duty Marines that I hope you like the reserves because they're the last ones that are going to touch your coffin, all right? So so at any rate, maybe you shouldn't have put that on film. All right, so but the bottom line is that none of this could be accomplished without the investment that our active component places in the Marine Forces Reserve, and that's our I&I staffs. I have about 1,600 active duty Marines that are fully integrated into our reserve units. In other words, they hold billets in those units, such as Tom Prentice, he's an active component colonel that is leading a reserve regiment. Hence, it really is that integrated team, not necessarily a reserve special magnet, but really our strength is that integration. And we're the only service that does it, and I think it really is a great model and separates us when it comes to readiness in the sense to have that type of skill sets. And they really carry, the hard work behind the scenes that set up the reserve component for success. Just in my own division last year, we had 244 inspections. Okay? Now, we're trying to bring that down, so Tom's been talking to me, so Tom, this year I'm going to make it 240. But no, we're working on it in reality. But the bottom line is that that is an enormous undertaking for very small staffs that do so much for us, and it should not be left or something that shouldn't be understood. And they just do miraculously. And it really is why we're ready, responsive, and relevant. So where are we at? I'm going to talk a little bit about what's happening in the Marine Corps in the sense of the future. General Dunford started as commandant before he became the chairman. General Neller has taken the baton in a sense and has challenged the Marine Corps to move ahead in the sense of what should we look like in the sense of capability, equipment for 2025. So we've been working very hard to make sure that after a decade of in Iraq and Afghanistan doing certain types of missions, that we're then back to our roots and ready for the amphibious responsibilities that we have. And so is our training meet that requirement? Is our equipment right? We've been putting a lot of time into this. And so as we move forward, what we have found is that we're going to have to do more work in information warfare, cyber, electromagnetic, type of work as what is happening today. The unmanned aircraft systems that are up and running right now, and how do we move forward with that? Both how do we use them, and then how do we counter them as we go forward? It is a major area of interest that we continue to work on. It is a absolute game changer in the sense for our Marine rifle companies to have their own type of drone with a camera to be able to see what's in front of them, if you can see the future and what it means. So we cannot be stuck up, as we talk about our successes in the past, it is really a great deal of time and effort being spent on what does our future look like. Do we have enough and the emphasis being is towards that near peer, right? Rather than the who we have been engaged with in our counterinsurgency fight. So getting ready for that kind of near peer conflicts. Do we have enough anti-air? Do we have enough armor type of capabilities? And so these are the type of areas that they're looking at. Is a Marine Rifle Squad big enough? In other words, should it be 14 men with one assistant squad leader completely devoted to having that UAS, that drone to be able to control that? So we're looking to the future. A lot of it is going to depend somewhat on what the end strength of the service is. And all the services are looking at that and have put forward different proposals. And what we did as if you ever wonder what generals end up doing in a sense, we did some war games out at our units. We brought them into Quantico. We had 12 generals sit for 10 days, go through it all, and then come up with how we believe the Marine Corps should be structured under 182,000. Then we basically said, build an optimum Marine Corps, and that ended at about 194, and then kind of worked that backwards. And then if the manning gets raised, as you see in the newspaper, the different proposals, then the commandant has options for what he wants to buy back from the Marine Corps. I had the opportunity to sit on that OPT, and it was quite an education as well as quite a battle in the sense of a lot of personalities in one room locked in there until we came up with answers. So don't know how well I fared, but I learned a lot. All right. So that's where the Marine Corps is going. And so for us in the reserve component, once they're finished in the sense of what the manning will be and how that is going to be equipped, we are in tremendous shape here to build what the active component is going to ask us to do as we go forward. So we are planning to have a planning team that would come together, and based on what the Marine Corps is asking us to do, how do we restructure the reserves to meet that? Do we need, for example, more cyber platoons in the reserves, right? Just in this area alone, how do we capture some of that talent that's in Silicon Valley as we go forward here that might want to serve, perhaps not on active duty, but maybe in the opportunity in the reserve component. So we're working on that as we go forward. So I think more to follow, but we certainly are thinking on those terms. We're certainly thinking about what the future should look like. I will say to you, though, that kind of brings me to a little bit of a balancing reality, though, in technology, in the sense that we had a Cessna aircraft was heading out to training. We had one of our PhDs in artificial intelligence, and then we had a Marine with him, and we had one of our chaplains wanted to go out to the training, and the aircraft was flying. Unfortunately, the pilot had a little bit of a heart problem, and so there was no one flying the aircraft. Then they found out there was only 2 parachutes. So the PhD said, look, I'm building things into the future for artificial intelligence, and hence, what I'm going to do is kind of impact, for all of America. So he grabbed one of the bags and jumped out of the aircraft. So the priest was left with the Marine, and the priest said, look, I've made my, my due with God, so you take the second bag. And the gunny looked at him, and he said, he goes, no, that's not going to be necessary. And the priest said, no, please take it. He goes, no, it's not going to be necessary. The smartest guy in the world just jumped out of the plane with my Alice pack. Now, I tell that story because, and that is a story, okay? Sometimes, I never saw myself as a general, so it's odd, but I realized with my tone when I started the story, I think some might have thought that was serious, right? Anyway, so that was my attempt. At any rate, I say that to you because underneath all of everything we talk about with technology, there is a little bit of that, right? About who we are as a culture, who we are as a Marine Corps, who we are as and our sailors that serve with us, and what the nation's asked us to do, and the reality of that. And sometimes you may not have to be the smartest, but damn well be ready to be able to go hand to hand and fight. And I can tell you unequivocally, we have not lost that capability. Fair enough, and we will not as we go forward. It is something that is ingrained on us, and we will absolutely continue to be when the nation asks us to be able to meet those missions. It's kind of important to kind of remember where we came from, right? So OAF-1, kind of traditional combat operations, correct? Then over the next decade, we got into a counterinsurgency strategy and a counterinsurgency fight. And then as we've now evolved, I think what you're asking is what is the transition? In other words, how do we transition to those host nation forces, both in Iraq and Afghanistan, so they're able to hold their own security, right? And that's really been our challenge. And I say that because during my tour in Afghanistan, when General Dunford asked me to come out, and then followed on by General Campbell, we set up a Directorate of Expeditionary Advising. And what that is and how that has evolved in a sense, both in Afghanistan and into Iraq, is what we're currently doing, which is kind of the next transitional phrase, which is train, advise, assist, and accompany. So what does that mean? What it means is that we have advisors in I'll just start in Afghanistan that are working with those host nation forces. And it limits our footprint. It keeps a smaller group, a more senior group. And what that does is it kind of helps with that host nation feeling in the sense of their confidence. It helps in the sense of less a feeling of abandonment in the sense of their partners. And it allows us to be in position to be able to provide some enablers. And that's where that accompany comes in, to be able to help them and assist them when it's critical for them while they are leading and fighting their war. So what are those type of enablers? Such as our for simplicity's sake, we have things obviously that fly in the air that is armed, right? So we can help with that. We can help with some medical in the sense of how they evacuate. And this is what our advisors are doing in both theaters. So it is that balancing to be able to use that leverage to help them move forward, to get the confidence to be able to move forward and provide the security that's necessary. But the difference is, if I can just make a quick point, is that of course I immediately defaulted down to the combat side. But what they're actually advising is that link between the ministerial at both in Iraq and Afghanistan down to those corps and those provincial police. And the advisement is really how do they work their own systems? In other words, how do you connect the strategic level, the national level, to the local level in a sense so they can sustain themselves well after we're gone. And that's where the constant battles are in a sense. And that goes to things that aren't necessarily as exciting, but much more critical, which is how do they recruit? How do they pay? How do they do leave runs? All those things underneath, which what we found is that as we withdrew, if we're not able to keep some sort of team down there to help them, that this is what you saw in the sense when they were asking to enable us to stay in Afghanistan and keep the manning where it was at, because they weren't just ready. They weren't moving forward enough to us to remove those type of advisors. It worked very well in Afghanistan. There's going to be obviously some setbacks to go forward, but that's what they're currently doing, and that is kind of the mission set both in Iraq and Afghanistan. So that is what our advisors are doing, and that is really kind of the future as you kind of look at some of these other countries in the sense of how we provide advisors to them to help, basically so that they can build the security platform to this sense. And I know there's been a number of articles in the last few days now that it has been put into the press that the Marines are going back to Helmand Province, back down to the 215th Corps. And I would simply say to you, though, that it is not to clear back Helmand Province. Okay, that's where the misnomer is. In other words, it is to be able to have enough of that, and they were trained by Marines, that's who their partners were, and they will have the most impact. And it is to go back down there to be able to help them to fulfill, to be able to have enough of security for those areas to help President Ghani to be able to make the type of negotiation that he will need to make politically to keep Afghanistan and be able to represent himself as a national figure here. And that's really what they're trying to do. In other words, as I kind of started, you might say that the ISIS and the Taliban might say that we may have all the clocks, but we've got the time. So what we're doing back to them, we're saying is that, you may think you have the time, but we're going to stand shoulder to shoulder with our partners. And that confidence, and as long as we keep on path, will help to build that security for those both countries that will hopefully allow us to have that partnership that we originally wanted when it all started. So I know it's a little bit probably more detail than you asked for or wanted, but I do think it's important to understand it, that as we get reintroduced in a sense, it is really about a partnership for advising. It is not about us taking the lead and going back out to clear certain areas again, and I hope that makes some sense. Of course, they're Marines, but I think the reality of it is not a service. It is just these men that, I think you said it right, that are Marines, and the country has recognized who they are, and I think if they were both here, they would both say the same thing, and I believe that. So they are just remarkable gentlemen, and please, General Kelly as well, and I know we all realize, his service to this country, and I know for this group, he certainly understands many of the other the family issues that are involved in service and putting folks into harm's way, as well as General Dunford and General Mattis. And in fact, if I can say something, I made a joke earlier, or at least I tried to, about my initial service there as the camp commandant. But General Mattis used to call me down there, and this is before we kind of understood the whole cultural piece, right? This was when we were in combat operations. But I'm here to tell you, he used to bring me down and ask me, am I giving the Iraqis that were working on the camp enough time to pray? Are we doing this for their families? Are we doing that? He was on me all the time about these issues. So I think we're going to be in great stead when we talk about our future here and his leadership. And yes, obviously he's a Marine and has been, was one for 40-some years, but, I'd say he's a lot more than that. And I think that his service will show that out here into the future, and the country is going to be well served by that teamwork between him and, as I tried to allude to, General Dunford, and how they'll work together here for the good of all of us into the future. And I'd also say that they also have the ability to understand what compromise means and what it means to do the right things for the right reasons and for the good of all. And I think we're just blessed to have them in the service for our country, and not necessarily the fact that they're Marines. As we go forward here, many times we talk about that strategic corporal and we talk about the tactical issues. I would say to you now, as we move forward, it really is a general's war. And this advising is senior officer business. And I think what you will see now at this point is, and don't be worried about that. You'll see in the paper once in a while about how many generals are in theater. But trust me, in that culture, it's helpful to have a general shoulder to shoulder with an Afghan or Iraqi general. And it makes a difference. So I think what you're going to see is that a lot of our senior leaders, which have always been there longer in a sense, but even staying longer as we move forward here, because of the fact that it is so much about that relationship and that ability to influence them as we go forward. You're absolutely right in the sense of how that shared common bond works together. I mean, I had the opportunity when this thing started that they would fly me out with a team, and I would go with an Afghan 4-star, 3-star, whether it be to Kunduz, whether it be to Ghazni, whether it be to Helmand. It wasn't just down for the 215th Corps. And within 6 months, I had a relationship with the leadership of Afghanistan, Paul Lebidine, but because of opportunity. But as I settled back down in Helmand for my last 3 months, which was some horrific combat situations, every morning I would get a call from their Minister of Defense, Stanizai, to ask me how the Afghans were doing, and it was through that trust and relationship. So I think as we go forward, as we continue to do this, I think that there's a realization that, and there's hopeful that, unlike me, that most of those officers' kids are out of college, but they're going to be doing some more time. In other words, it's important to keep the continuity there as we go forward. That's right. Now, we can keep rotating at the tactical level for the advisors, and they're learning certain skills and teaching the Iraqis or Afghans certain skills, but it is the relationships that will drive the difference, right? The strategic relationships that will help those countries to get where we want them to go. And that's not going to be down on the ground down in Helmand. It's going to be up in Kabul. It's going to be in Baghdad. It's going to be the realization and the leverage that we hold over and the relationship to have them, meet their requirements. I can't tell you how many nights I would simply be there, and because of our ISR, our ability to have cameras look down into an area from the sky, and I would bring the Afghan general next to me and say, look what your soldiers are doing. And I can tell you something, that tactical failure drives movement. And what I mean by that is, in the Afghan culture and the Iraqi culture, is that's universal. So it was actually showing them tactical failure that caused them to then start making the leadership changes they need to make to get the right folks into the jobs. So it's those, but you got to have the relationships to do that, and you got to have the leverage to do that, and that's where we have gone, and that's what we're currently doing, and I think that would be the way forward. And quite frankly, it really has been on the backs of a lot of our soft forces that have been doing this type of advising for a long time. And, I hit on 2 countries, but my gosh, I could start ticking off everything happening in Africa, in Yemen, in Libya, in many, many other places. And as a service, I would simply say to you that the Marine Corps, as I talked about fighting a near peer, right? Fight the war you're in, not the one you want, right? In the sense that, currently we're doing advising. And I think there is some thoughts that the Marine Corps, because of our backgrounds, are pretty good at it, and so there's a balancing of us helping with the soft as we go forward on these type of teams. 1995, when I first joined the reserves, my first CO was Allan Cruz, and one thing when I said he was a little bit visionary is about certain things, like the ball was coming and he wanted to do just not a event, he wanted to do the event, right? So, as only Al will do. So we ended up on the Queen Mary, And the guest honor was a gentleman named Pete Conrad, who was the third man to walk on the moon. And so with that said, I ended up as the captain in charge of the ceremony. And so when Mr. Conrad got to the Queen Mary that night, I went and found him. He was a retired Navy captain. And I said to him, "Sir, just so you know, while you're up there talking, there's going to be Marines at parade rest and all the rest. I just want to kind of make a hint to you that just keep that in mind, that the Marines will be standing up there and so forth, and kind of let them know to please keep the comments somewhat short." So he said, he looked at me and says, "I got it, Captain." And when it was his time to speak, he simply said he wanted to add a little bit to Marine Corps history. And what he said is that when he was a test pilot in 1964 in Texas, that he was flying a plane malfunctioned, it crashed, and the backseat was a Marine Corps captain that died. And that when he landed and walked on the moon, he took that Marine Corps captain's gold wings and he placed them underneath the American flag. And what he wanted to add to Marine Corps history was, don't let ever be said that a Marine had not walked on the moon. And that's all he said, and he stopped. And then later in the evening, he came and found me, and he said, "Captain, was that short enough for you?" And I said, "Yes." I said, "Yeah, wait." He said, "What did you think?" I go, "Well, that was just a wonderful sentiment." He goes, "Well, it was more than a sentiment. Because what I was really trying to say to you all was what makes it so tremendous about your service is the fact that you're passing on our traditions, everything about us from generation to generation. And those traditions, what makes us so special as Americans." And I hope everyone understood that tonight. So I say that in closing because, as I kind of joked when I started, as I see the group here, I know how much commitment and time is spent helping our service members, helping our families, helping so many parts of us. And just so really, it is a thank you from all of us for everything that you have done for us. And I would be really remiss today if I didn't highlight our two police officers over here. And I'm not quite sure why you're here, but I hope it's not because you have a warrant for me. But so I swear to God, I've got that. I put my phone now in the cradle. But I will say to you two gentlemen, thanks for being here today. And anything that's said about who we are, doubly applies for who you are, because it is amazing challenges that you face today. So that is it in conclusion. Thank you all. And I talked about passing traditions on from generation to generation. I will tell you that when I joined the reserves, I thought a whole lot of myself, right? And quite frankly, I knocked some heads. And the truth is that if Colonel Cruz, may yelled at me and did some things to me, but he never put anything on paper. And I say that because I would not be here today 100% if he had done that. So I guess on a personal thank you, sir, I would tell you, thank you so much, for that in that regard. And as I now become or am, I guess, a senior leader in the Marine Corps, I try to remember that and do the same. So God bless you all. Semper Fidelis. Thanks for letting me speak today. Hoorah.
Two items, sir. One, a coin from the Marine Corps Coordinating Council. Second item, and I'll hold this up for a second, is a pair of Iraqi Army rank badges, what were basically Saddam Hussein's rank badges. And this is unique only to him. It's not the only set, but it was, quote, purchased in Al-Hila, Babylon, when you were the mayor, and it was part of 1MEF in our same time frame in 2003.
Thanks, man.
And thank you for being here, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you very much to all of you for being here. I especially want to thank the units from the active component, certainly the United States Coast Guard, sir. Admiral, thank you very much. And 23rd Marines, 4 Force Recon, 6 Anglico, and Recruiting Station San Francisco. We've worked with you on multiple levels at multiple times. We will continue to do so. We continue to pledge our support to all of you that are here today. Thank you very much.